North Korean troops have adjusted their tactics on the battlefield, indicating that they are gaining valuable combat experience in modern warfare, according to analysts from the American Institute for the Study of War. Especially, they have reduced the size of assault groups from 50 to 10-15 soldiers. However, North Korean assault groups remain larger than their Russian counterparts. A captured North Korean soldier told the truth to the South Korean publication Chosun Daily. When North Korean troops were deployed to Russia, they had no combat experience.
We underwent basic training, but there was no specific strategy for warfare involving drones. Our training focused on speed, running, camouflage, or shooting drones from the ground.
The prisoner also spoke about the ideological indoctrination that North Korean soldiers undergo. For example, security agents convinced them that in the Kursk region they were not only fighting Ukrainians but also soldiers from South Korea.
They told us that all the Ukrainian drone operators were actually South Korean soldiers.
The Russian command is using North Korean soldiers not only as assault troops. According to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, recently there has been a significant increase in the number of North Korean artillery and missile units, as well as support personnel in the Kursk region. North Korean soldiers are quickly learning, adapting to modern combat tactics and technologies.
Their combat effectiveness has improved dramatically, not only with conventional weapons like tanks, but also with advanced systems such as drones. Vadim Skibitsky, representative of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, in an interview with the Chosun.
The Russian Federation first involved North Korean troops in combat operations in the Kursk region in the fall of 2024. According to both Ukrainian and South Korean intelligence, there are about 20,000 servicemen in total. Despite significant losses, around one-third of the North Korean contingent, North Korean troops continue to participate in joint operations with Russian forces, emphasized Kirill Bogdanov, the chief of the main intelligence directorate of intelligence of Ukraine. Pyongyang is using Russia's war against Ukraine to modernize its military technologies and gain an army with modern combat experience.
This war has mobilized the full military capabilities of the nations involved. Only 3 countries, Ukraine, Russia, and North Korea, are gaining direct experience in full-scale 21st century warfare. The North Korean military of the future will be fundamentally different from its past. Kirill Bogdanov, the chief of the main directorate of intelligence of Ukraine, in an interview with the Chosun.
The Russian army has been unable to push Ukrainian forces out of the Kursk region for over 6 months. Lacking real victories, the Kremlin has begun inventing imaginary ones. On February 19th, Putin claimed that Russian troops had allegedly crossed the border into Ukraine's Kursk region and entered the Sumy region. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine denied this information, stating that Russian forces had launched an offensive operation in the Kursk region for several days, but without success.
One of the repelled attacks around 6 o'clock in the morning was an attempt by a Russian unit to advance towards the Ukrainian state border on the Nikolaevo-Darino-Zhuravka axis. The attempt was unsuccessful. There are no grounds for panic. The armed forces of Ukraine continue defensive operations in the Kursk region of Russia, destroying the enemy and holding several hundred square kilometers of the aggressor country's territory. DMYTROLYKHOVIY, representative of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook.
With significant losses within the aggressor country's army, the Russian command is requesting new reinforcements, and there is a clear shortage of North Korean soldiers. The Russian Federation continues to recruit Cubans for the war against Ukraine. Researchers have calculated that around 5,000 Cuban citizens are already fighting in the Russian armed forces. The first reports of Cuban involvement in Russia's war against Ukraine appeared as early as 2023. At the time, Cuban authorities opposed the recruitment of their citizens, but Moscow proceeded anyway. Cubans are arriving in Russia, claiming tourism as the purpose of their visit in official documents. Their motivation to fight is clear. This is money. Cubans are promised a salary around $2,000, an astronomical sum for Cuban citizens. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Yulia Hranovskaya, UATV News.
The Support Ukraine summit was held in Kyiv. On the third anniversary of the Russian invasion, the leaders of the Baltic countries, Spain, Canada, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Norway and Sweden, the Minister for European Affairs of the French Republic, as well as the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, arrived in Kyiv. Financial assistance was announced at the summit. Thus, the United Kingdom will allocate £4.5 billion, Spain military assistance for €1 billion, Sweden will allocate €100 million for air defense equipment. Ukraine has struck the Ryazan oil refinery in Russia with drones. This was reported by the General Staff. The strike was carried out at night by units of the Unmanned Systems Forces, the main intelligence directorate, in cooperation with other components of the defense forces. This is the third attack on the Ryazan refinery since the beginning of the year. In general, since the beginning of 2025, the armed forces of Ukraine have attacked 27 fuel and energy facilities on the territory of Russia. The strikes were mainly carried out using drones, but missiles were also used. The Council of the European Union has approved the 16th package of economic and individual restrictive measures against the Russian Federation. The package includes a ban on EU imports of aluminium from Russia, sanctions against 74 vessels of the Russian Shadow Fleet, 53 new companies that support the Russian military-industrial complex or are involved in evading sanctions, and against 48 individuals and 35 organizations that support the Russian military complex and are active in evading sanctions.
Robert Fico has once again publicly expressed his criticism of Brussels and Kyiv, this time to an American audience. The Prime Minister of Slovakia visited the United States, where he spoke at the Conference for American Conservatives. During his speech, Fico praised Donald Trump and censured Europe for allegedly prolonging Russia's war against Ukraine by supporting Kyiv. The Prime Minister of Slovakia defends Russia's aggression towards Ukraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, no one is disputing that Russia's use of military force in Ukraine was a violation of international law. However, Russia had serious security reasons for doing so because it has long been misled on the issue of NATO enlargement. The conflict could have been brought to an end shortly after it began. The absolute majority of the European Union member states, with the exception of Slovakia and Hungary, have endorsed the idea that the war in Ukraine should be used to weaken Russia politically and economically.
In the United States, Fico met with Trump ally and advisor Elon Musk. The Prime Minister of Slovakia revealed that they discussed three topics: tariffs and duties the White House plans to impose on EU goods, investments for Bratislava, and the termination of the work of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Fico accuses this organization of distorting Slovakia's political system. Previously, in a letter to Musk, he asked for information about the grants the U.S. Agency for International Development provided to the media and non-governmental organizations.
Various non-governmental organizations have been engaging in anti-government activities, sometimes even replacing political opposition structures. Mr. Musk assured us that this era is over. The administration of the new American president has no interest in interfering in the internal affairs of other countries with American money.
The visit to the U.S. by the Prime Minister of Slovakia has been criticized by the Slovak opposition. They believe it has nothing to do with promoting the country's interests, according to the largest opposition party in Slovakia.
This is not the path of the Prime Minister of Slovakia, but the personal path of Robert Fico, who only has internal political goals. The sole purpose of this visit is to get a photo with the President of the USA and show off his politics to the world. After meetings with Vladimir Putin and the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping. In fact, it's foreign policy that leads to catastrophe, from the statement by the Progressive Slovakia Party on Facebook.
On February 21, 2025, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets in over 40 cities across Slovakia. Protests against Robert Fico's pro-Russian policies started in January after Fico's visit to Moscow. Slovak citizens are demanding his resignation. On February 21, 7 years ago, Slovak journalist Jan Kusak was murdered. He was investigating corruption in Slovakia, tax manipulations, and misuse of EU funds. In 2018, Kursk's murder triggered the largest protests in the country's modern history. As a result, Fico's cabinet was forced to resign.
I feel like we made it clear to our elites, here in Slovakia, this will not happen again. We don't want this to be like in Russia, where such things happen regularly and no one even investigates them anymore.
The situation now is absolutely terrible. I have this feeling that they died completely unnecessarily, because everything is coming back. The whole mafia is in government, and it's really awful.
Robert Fico is a political veteran among European leaders. He has served as the Prime Minister of Slovakia 3 times. The next parliamentary elections in Slovakia are scheduled for September 2027. However, mass protests against Fico's pro-Russian policies cast doubt on whether he can hold into power until the elections, according to analysts. Fico, for his part, has promised that this time protests will not force him to resign. Reported by Alexander Zaslavets and Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News. The President of France called on allies to make strategic decisions to defend Europe. He also proposed introducing joint European funding to increase arms purchases and production. Emmanuel Macron is convinced that it will be difficult for Europe to have a unified army. However, he believes it is possible to create shared defense capabilities. Otherwise, he argues, Europe will not be able to become more autonomous.
As Europeans, we must increase our military efforts. We, the French, have a strong army, the most effective in Europe. We will need to strengthen our defense and our security. In the coming weeks, I want to organize a large-scale European funding initiative to increase defense procurement and production.
France must also increase its defense budget share, President Macron is convinced. During a meeting with parliamentary factions and groups, he suggested that the National Assembly, the country's parliament, consider increasing defense spending to 5% of gross domestic product. He reminded them that in the 60s, 70s and 80s, during the Cold War, France had similar levels of defense spending. However, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, investments were reduced. Today, France spends about 2% of its gross domestic product on defense.
The time is coming when we will have to invest even more, both in France and across Europe, to strengthen our defense and security. I'm not sure if 5% is the right figure for France, but in any case, we will have to raise these expenses. I do not rule out launching a savings mechanism. We are entering an era where each of us should ask ourselves, what can we do for the French nation and the Republic? In this sense, such a savings mechanism would be a very good idea.
In recent days, Emmanuel Macron has had numerous conversations with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The two leaders have coordinated their diplomatic efforts for the immediate future.
During the conversation, the presidents of Ukraine and France shared details of their contacts with other world leaders and coordinated positions, joint plans, and next steps. Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron also discussed in detail the views on security guarantees from a publication on the website of the Office of the President of Ukraine.
In particular, the leaders discussed preparations for Emmanuel Macron's visit to Washington. According to the French president, he intends to meet with Donald Trump and urge him to be weak in the face of Putin, as this is not in Washington's interest. How can you be authoritative in the face of China then? Macron asked.
He, Macron, will come to the United States to speak for the Europeans and to say that Ukraine's future cannot be decided without them. Benjamin Haddad, the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of France, from a publication in Le Figaro.
The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, is also preparing to visit Washington. Information about the upcoming visits of Macron and Starmer was confirmed by the White House. They stated that the leaders of France and the UK would visit the United States separately, and the dates for their visits have been set.
And next Monday, the President will host France's President Emmanuel Macron. And on Thursday, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the White House as well.
According to The Telegraph, the Prime Minister of the UK will urge Donald Trump to keep American fighter jets and missiles ready in Europe in case Russia violates the terms of any potential ceasefire. Additionally, Starmer is expected to bring the United States a strategy for deploying European troops in Ukraine.
Sir Keir Starmer will present Donald Trump with a plan to send fewer than 30,000 European troops to Ukraine in an attempt to secure American protection for the deployment. The Prime Minister is expected to detail how European forces could police any ceasefire deal brokered by the U.S. president when the pair meet in Washington next week, from a publication in The Telegraph.
The question of a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine is also being considered in Paris. According to Emmanuel Macron, France would likely be willing to send troops to guarantee peace only if it's achieved through negotiations. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Valeria Nikipelova, UATV News.